morning, everyone. Welcome to our weekly podcast, Knowledge Empowers. As always, with you is me, Kat. 안녕하세요. Then we have Collage.
Dobre ráno. Good morning, everyone.
And we have a guest today with us. I usually call him Jacob, but his name is Jakub.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Okie doke. What kind of 3 random facts, fun facts, tidbits have you prepared for us, Collage?
So we will start with the cotton candy. Can you guess who invented it? I'm not sure. I don't mean by name, but let's go for the profession. Who could have invented cotton candy?
Cotton candy.
No idea.
Really no clue. Probably some chemist.
A dentist.
No,
What?
obviously.
Dentist, yep. I'm not sure why or whatsoever, how he came across it, but it was a dentist who invented cotton candy.
Okay.
And now, they are saying that sweets are not good for your teeth.
No,
they
that's
destroy our
why
teeth.
that's why they have now lots of customers.
Yeah.
That's the trick. Okay. The other tidbit I want to mention is another myth, a common popular myth, and it's about the memory of a fish, of a goldfish.
The 3 seconds memory?
The 3 seconds memory, yep,
Is
which
that a
is
myth?
not actually true. Yeah, it's a myth. It's not even 5 minutes or 5 seconds. It could be actually up to 5 months or even
Ooh.
more. So what they've done, the experiment is that you can teach a fish a trick. So like with feeding, they will remember that when you're feeding them and specific positions. And what they've done is that they learned a trick that they've played a specific music. And when they played specific music, the feeding happened. And what they've done is that they did this several times. So they've created this behavior, this habit, this memory. And then they stopped for 5 months and they returned after 5 months, played the music, and the fish were again hastily going for feeding. So
It's like the Pavlov effect.
Yeah, it is,
For the
but
dogs.
it's still the memory. Yeah, it is similar. It is exactly the same, like with the bell. So,
But this
So
is
if
not
you have
fair.
short
Now
memory-
I cannot
Yeah.
say that I have a memory of a goldfish. That's just not fair.
yeah. Well, you can still say it, you can still
Yeah.
use it as a parable or idiom, but it's not true.
Yeah,
Aw.
everyone will understand. But do you know, Collage, how the myth came to be?
I haven't been chasing it, but I think it will be just, myth like the usual ones.
So a random person says something and suddenly it's
There you go.
official.
The third fact is a bit related to the environment we are living in currently and global warming and stuff like that. Which of these engines came first, electric or gas engine?
I think at the same time,
Same
I don't know.
time,
or roughly at the
Electric.
same time.
roughly the same time. True. The electric was first by about 50 years.
Oh, okay.
So electric engines were already patented and already tested and being in production when gas engines came about. So
Interesting.
I can add one fun fact on top of this because I was listening to interesting podcast why we didn't have electric cars sooner, or why it wasn't such a big thing sooner, and they explained that especially at the time the main buying force for the cars were men, obviously, because they had the money. And the marketing companies for the bus engine cars decided to market the bus engine cars as the manly version of the car, because there is all this smoke and smell and oil, grease. So they marketed this as a very very manly thing, and the electric was for ladies because it was quiet and.
Can you
But that's
imagine?
not true,
Husband is coming
quite-
home and I will put grease on him, like, be manly.
not just that, but I don't know how they made a connection between quiet engine and a woman.
Well, Kat
Smack
can explain that.
Oh my gosh. Okay, we have a guest today. And the question is, why do we have a guest today? So it's again to continue with our talks of the project management things. And today's topic will be storming, brainstorming, ideations, whatever we want to name it. It just keep changing the name all the time. And my very first encounter about like brainstorming, I still remember it when Jakub said, but it's not just brainstorming, it's supposed to be like storming. There are other types of storming that you can do. And I was like, what do you mean there are other? I only thought there is just one. So my mind just blown away, like what do you mean? And then he started explaining to me, and it's like a new world just opened in front of my eyes. So let's just maybe even start like what it is, or is there any correct name for it that we can call it?
I don't know if there is like correct name. I usually call it ideation. And yeah, it's exactly as you mentioned. Usually people think that brainstorming and ideation is the same thing. It's, like genes. Everyone calls all the, I don't know how it's even called in general terms, but genes is a name of a brand or a company, and suddenly it became like a common name for the whole pack of things. And it's very similar with brainstorming. So it's like a quintessential ideation technique, and it came over, and suddenly everyone is using it interchangeably. But ideation in general is like a technique or exercise which you can use to generate many ideas. So ideation, I think that it's pretty clear how it's called that way. And yeah, there is like, I don't even want to estimate how many ideation techniques you can have. It's probably dozens or even hundreds, and very often you can combine multiple of the techniques, and you can change them as you want, as you see fit. Usually I don't like to follow exact specific instructions for the technique. I try to make it work for the specific occasion, for the specific people I am working with at the time. So yeah, brainstorming is just one of the techniques, and what I think is it's very valuable on ideation technique is that usually when you are facing some problem or you want to come up with new idea, you kind of get stuck, in your own mind, in your own biases and so on, and you have just this tunnel vision and look at the problem from one perspective. But ideation can help you to kind of bypass this or get over it. And since usually it involves bigger group of people, you have more ideas coming from different people from different backgrounds, different experiences, and so on. So that's probably the main reason why usually you do it in bigger groups. You can do it also alone if you want, but I don't think it works very well, and it's so useful.
How do you go about it? I guess that since you're talking about groups, you put people into one room, you say like, this is the problem, solve it, and talk about it.
Yeah, well, it really depends on the specific technique, obviously, but we can discuss some commonalities within the techniques and something that is usually the same. So in general, I would suggest that you should start with some kind of icebreaker for the people. Very often you do it with people who know very well each other, and they might be friends and so on, but it can be also a group of people who never met before. When we are working on project and you get all the stakeholders from different countries and different teams into one room, and you want them to work together. They probably never meet before, so you want them to loosen up a bit, since you are expecting some kind of creativity from them and sharing ideas with the rest of the group. So it's very important.
Maybe to jump in. How do you pick those people? Like, do you pick the best introverts or best extroverts, or what?
I think it's very important to have a divergent group of people. So you pick people who have probably different roles within the company, who have a different gender, for example, different experiences, different age, and so on. So if you picked all developers 20 years old, male, they would probably generate very similar ideas. So you want to have a divergent group of people. Usually I would say up to seven people at the most, because then it gets out of the control, and it's very hard to moderate it and to get everyone involved.
Should they be connected somehow to the project or to the topic you are solving?
Not necessarily. I mean, it can help in some ways, because people are aware of the limitations. You can have all the bureaucratic processes on the ground, but this knowledge, on the other hand, can limit the creation of ideas. So you don't even open your mouth and you throw it away because you think, okay, this will never be agreed in our company. It's too bold, or it's too different, and they don't even mention it. So I think it's important to have some people who are kind of familiar or involved in the project or in the problem you are trying to solve, and also some outsiders. Not necessarily, like you pick random people from the street, but maybe colleague from a completely different department who maybe doesn't even know what are you doing actually.
And across of these ideation, brainstorming, storming, whatever we want to call it, is it valid for all of them? The rule that you are not focusing on the quality but quantity. That whatever that rule is valid across of all of those ideations.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is one of the most important rules, that you are trying to generate as many ideas as possible. You don't evaluate the quality or feasibility or whatever of the idea at the spot. And this is because once you start looking at the ideas critically, first of all, like when I come up with idea and you criticize it right away, I don't have such a motivation to bring new ideas on the table, especially when I'm shy person and I took all the courage just to say something out loud, and I'm criticized right away. So it can hold the ideation process. And second thing is that even though your idea doesn't have to be good or possible, it can, by association, trigger new ideas within someone else, because you make me think about something and I change it a little bit to make it suddenly much better idea. So you don't want to stop any ideation during the exercise. You don't want to halt it. The evaluation happens at the end. Once everything is done, you wrap up and you collect the ideas. Then you can evaluate the ideas and pick the best one or the most suitable for your needs.
So how does such an ideation even look like?
So yeah, as Kalach mentioned previously, usually you bring some people into one room. I think it's good to have a room because there is privacy. You don't want to have it in open space where everyone can hear you and distract you and interfere. So you bring them into one room, then you explain what are we trying to do here. We are trying to solve this problem, or we are trying to came up with new innovative tool, or we are trying to brainstorm a logo for our company, whatever. So you clearly define the objective or the problem you are trying to solve. Then you explain the rules for the specific technique. So this needs to be very, very clear, especially the rule I mentioned a second ago about not criticizing the ideas. I think I never had ideation when somebody didn't do this. It's very I think natural for us to try to evaluate right away. So this needs to be really, really clear for the people so that they know what are they expected to do, what are the rules which need to be followed, what is the time schedule for the session. Then you start with the exercise, or you can start with the ice breaking I mentioned to loosen up the people, but then you go to the exercise, you perform it, you collect all the ideas. Nowadays, you just take photo of the table or of the wall with the stickies or whatever, and then you evaluate it. Some people like to do a voting session at the end. I think this is most common in design thinking practices. And what you do there is that you give people some amount of votes, and then they put a mark or sticker or something next to the ideas they like. And the idea with the most votes is the winner. However, I don't think this is usually a good idea. I think it's kind of counterproductive. Because from my experience, when you do this, the most common average idea wins almost every single time. When you are trying to come up with something new, something bold, you don't want a huge group of people to mitigate towards average result. For
Basically,
example,
you need a Steve Jobs in there who comes with the crazy idea, and he said, and we're gonna do it.
They do the dirty job for you, and then you take the professional who should be responsible for deciding which idea is the best, or not necessarily best. It doesn't have to be the best idea necessarily, maybe the most viable, but I think it should be someone who actually understands the context and can do the decision. I can't really imagine when Elon Musk was thinking about what new crazy idea he should follow up. I can imagine him having an ideation session with a lot of people, and if they voted for the best company to start next, I don't think he would start SpaceX, for example. At the moment, nobody would vote for, let's create spaceships for common people. I mean, I don't think anyone would vote for that. So if you give the power to the crowd in this scenario, it usually goes with the most common result.
We can't even talk about Steve Jobs or Elon Musk, because these are the two individuals where you would say the line between fool and genius is so thin that and Elon Musk is a storyteller who has an idea and is capable to convince investor to invest. So it's not even like, I'm gonna have a brainstorming. No, he knows what he wants and he finds the investor. And then Steve
True.
Jobs, like ever since you look at the company, since he died, they didn't invent anything so crazy, so new, so innovative. It's like they are scared, but he was the genius that when he said, I want a pocket iPod, then they create pocket iPod, and everyone was like blown away, like, wow. So we can't even talk about, they are like, that's a different league, these two, that's a different league of, of that. But let's just go a little bit step back. And you were saying there are some rules. You mentioned one rule, and the rule was you cannot criticize. Like, it's really about any idea goes up. And what other rules are there when you do the ideation sessions?
To reiterate, so yeah, don't criticize, probably the most common and most broken rule. Second rule is we are trying to get quantity over quality. We kind of mentioned this also. So yeah, you can even say totally crazy ideas. As I mentioned, it can, maybe if it's totally ridiculous, it can still bring up new idea in someone else which will be actually very good. So yeah, go for crazy ideas. It's very creative. Another thing is that you are trying to look at the issue with mindset in yes and, compared to no, this is stupid. Let's not do it. So you are trying to build on the previously mentioned ideas. Not every single idea you bring on the table has to be completely different or new. It can be quite similar to something that's already on there, but you put a bit of twist on it. Another rule I would say is that try to get rid of all the distractions. So nowadays, everyone has one of these in the pocket or on the table, and I think it's very good to agree with everyone in the room. Let's put this away, maybe in a box or out of the room, ideally.
Those who are listening to us, Jakub was referring to mobile phone. He showed the mobile phone, he didn't say it out loud.
Yeah. Or, even notebooks. Very often I saw people bringing laptops into the ideation session, and, I have very important meeting and I have to reply to emails. Now I try to get rid of all the distractions. And I would say last rule is try to keep track of the time, because maybe it doesn't look like it, but it can get very exhausting. Like if you think about new things for half an hour, I think it's very stressing on the mind. So you should have like fixed time for the whole session and keep to it. I mean, even though people might be able to continue for some time, just cut it. You had 10 minutes for this session. I mean, usually still the ideas don't go up in quality, after after several minutes. Then it's just struggling and everyone is trying to come up with something new. But I don't think there is much value in continuing, after, let's say, 10 minutes of the exercise. So have a timer in the room and follow it.
What is the recommended time to run ideation session?
This would be very different for different techniques. I don't think I can answer that in general.
But can it be even like 3 hours long?
No, definitely not. I mean, you can have like several sessions of different exercises, stacked to each other, but then you have to put some breaks between it to freshen up. Maybe again put some icebreaker in the middle of their exercises, because it gets really exhausting really fast. you both of you have a lot of experience with design thinking sessions, which sometimes take a week, and it's like total killer. I'm
For
so
introverts,
exhausted
yes. For
after.
us extroverts, no.
Yeah. But maybe not for you, but usually, after hours and hours of thinking and interacting with a lot of different people, I'm super exhausted. And mainly for the moderator, it gets very exhausted, because even though he's maybe not necessarily contributing to the ideas, but he is there looking at the session and trying to get everyone in line. So it's very difficult. I think also both of you have experience with moderating these kind of sessions, so you know what I'm talking about.
So when you say moderator, so maybe a couple of questions. Do you need to have one? And if yes, what is his or her responsibility?
I would say that generally, yes, you need someone who is moderating the whole thing. If you try to distribute the responsibilities of moderator within the group, then it kind of gets chaotic and messy. And if you tell to one specific person within the group, you should do all of this, then he's already moderator. So yeah, it is very important to have one. I think it's also important to not to get involved much. He can get involved a bit, but like get a bit of distance from the rest of the group. And the responsibilities. So it's actually very different and difficult role to follow up. Obviously, moderator has to keep track of the rules, to make sure that everyone is following them, that they are clear, that everyone understands. As I mentioned in the beginning, you explain what is going to happen and how and in what time frame and so on. So moderator is the one who explains all of it. He also organizes everything necessarily. So the room in which you will be, he brings the sticky notes or the whiteboard or the table or whatever. Preferably some snack. I think it's very good when he brings some snacks into the room. He keeps track of the time to make sure that it's followed. But I think the most important role is to make sure that everyone is involved, that everyone feels welcomed, good during the session. Since you have different personalities within the group, you have extroverts and introverts. Extroverts tend to be more forward during the session. And if they just shout the ideas all the time, then it's harder.
I don't know what you are talking about.
Yeah, I'm sure. So it's very easy for extrovert to trample the introverts, and they don't say anything during the whole session, because like this person is constantly speaking, so why should I bother? I'm comfortable with being quiet. So the moderator is trying to find balance, calm a bit I don't want to generalize like extroverted people, but people who are more active and engaged. You want to calm them down a bit, not to shut them, because you don't want to do that, but to create space for other people to bring their ideas as well. And this is very hard, difficult to put into some general framework how to do this. Usually you have to kind of get the vibe of the group you are working with. Maybe even during the icebreaker, you already can see, like this person behaves like this and this person like this. And you need to adjust on the go for the circumstances. Usually when I'm moderating such a session, and I see that some people are getting less involved than others. I try to like pick them up from the crowd. I just call them by their name and ask them regularly, like, do you have any ideas? We can take turns. It doesn't have to be like random shooting, but we can go in a circle and everyone will say one idea. Obviously, you don't want people to force to say something if they don't have any idea at the moment. That's completely fine. I mean, it needs to be clear that you are not failing if you don't have anything to contribute at the moment. You can have a new idea in a minute or in two. So I sometimes I pick specific people from the crowd and ask them directly. Sometimes when the session it's getting slower, the ideas stop coming and we still have time, then I try to steer the pot a little bit by either bringing idea of my own, usually like very out of the box crazy idea. I don't think about if it's actually good, but something totally crazy. This is the part where I get actually involved into the brainstorming session. I mentioned one or two ideas of my own, and very often it triggers another round of ideas from the rest. Or what can you do is try to put a different perspective on the problem you are trying to solve. Because if you have a clear problem defined, you can say, okay, but let's think about it from the perspective of, I don't know, elderly person, like a retired person. How would they look at this problem?
And is it the job of a moderator also afterwards to somehow summarize or create maybe meeting minutes and then share it with the person who asked the moderator to do the storming session, the ideation? Like how do you sort of, what's the end of it?
Yeah, well, very often either project manager tends to do this moderating thing or designer of the team. So very often they are the person who wants this brainstorming to happen, and they are already there. I know the results. If you are asked by someone, please do this brainstorming or ideation session for me, then yeah, you need to archive everything, maybe ideally digitize it in some way so that it's easier to work with it. And I think it's also important to keep everyone involved, informed to some extent. You don't just want to thank them, thank you for being here, bye, and they will never hear again about which idea was picked or how it was handled. So I think it's very good to communicate to them the results afterwards, so that they know that they actually contributed in some way, and maybe their idea was the one which will change the company or the world.
Jakub, we were talking about putting people into the room, bringing them together, talking, and post-its and everything like that. That sounds a lot like face-to-face. Is there a virtual possibility, variant where we meet virtually?
Well, yeah, there is always possibility to do it online, especially during the last 2.5 years. Everything has tendency to go online, but I have to say that if it's possible to do something like this in person, do it in person. Do everything in your power to make it happen face to face. Many of the rules I mentioned before, get rid of the distractions. For example, it's much harder to follow when you are online. Let's face it. How all the meetings, online meetings work.
Oh, here is a ping from a colleague. I need to answer that.
Yeah. So you are already on the distraction device when you are doing it online. usually there is always one colleague who tells you, "Oh, sorry, the carrier is here. I need to go answer and pick something up." So it's like extremely hard to get rid of the distractions. First of all. Second of all, it's very hard for the moderator to empathize with the participants. As I mentioned, you want to get the feel of the room and understand a bit how the people work there, and it's much harder to do when you are just looking at the screen. In this instance, we are looking. At least you have the cameras on, but very often people even shut down the camera because they are in their pajamas or they just woke up or are lying in the bed. So it's very hard to get feel of the room this way.
It would be nice if my company would pay to all of us like plane tickets that we could meet. That's the problem when you are part of the global team like I am. But I have in my team 2 colleagues who are like amazing in ideation, and they know all of the different methodologies for ideation. And lately, they helped me with one of my programs, and they did a Scamper. Have you ever heard of that one?
Scamper, yeah, I heard about it, but never tried it.
So I'm just gonna, Scamper is basically an abbreviation for each letter. So I'm gonna look right, just so I can say what it stands for. So it's a substitute, combine, adapt, modified, put to another use, eliminate, and reverse. And in the global environment, so we use a tool, and we use the virtual stickers. And actually, I think this is don't want to say strong moderator, but really someone who understands and knows what he or she wants to retrieve out of the ideation is also capable to motivate the group of people and really guide them through each steps what they need to do, so they really don't feel distracted. And that what happened in my case, that my moderators really were also I had 2 moderators, so really one helping to another to steer keep on going, putting the stickers in, etc., until we went through the whole circle. Being on online, it of course requires maturity level and being professional. It requires strong moderators who are capable to steer the communication and the engagement and everything. But it's absolutely doable. And like you mentioned, we were almost 3 years in this sort of COVID situation thing. So it also taught us lots of other activities, or to do things differently, think differently. So I wouldn't, not always it's possible to say, let's go face to face. I wish that the company would pay me plane tickets, but that's not gonna happen. So
yeah. I mean, definitely, that's why I said it's much harder. It's not impossible, and as you mentioned, you need mature people, not just moderators, but also the participants to follow up with everything that's expected. So it's doable, yeah, definitely. But I really recommend to do it in person if that's possible. Yeah, I wouldn't expect company to pay for the tickets to go for a 1-hour ideation session to other side of the world, obviously. But if you can connect it with other activities, with team building activities, with maybe strategic meetings and so on, then it's better to try to fit it within a bigger agenda and to do it in person.
So I think we've covered the basics of the ideation. Do you have any recommendation, Jakub, for us when it comes to this?
Recommendations: follow the rules. I would say, even though I am not fan of the rules, but in this case, I think the rules help the creativity. The limitations help you.
Is there any book, portal, provider who would you recommend to follow to know more about the ideations?
I'm not actually familiar with any book which would be specifically oriented on ideation, although there might be, obviously. I think good introduction is usually some of the design thinking toolkits. Google has one on their web. I think IDEO is pretty famous for design thinking. So there is a lot of them on the internet. You can just look for design thinking, and it contains a lot of ideation practices and exercises.
With that said, I'm gonna say 수고하셨습니다.
Bye bye.
Goodbye. Thank you.
This podcast represents our own opinions, experience, and our own ideas. We do not represent any official statement from our employers, and this is not their official channel representing the company.